Welcome to the Wealth Stream podcast. The team at Hightower Great Lakes share their insights and passions for empowering their clients to live their best life. In this energetic podcast, we will take you on a journey to help you navigate your financial future, overcome life's challenges to reach your financial goals, and find the financial clarity you've been searching for. Let's explore the downstream impact of your wealth and what it means to you, your family, and your community to live greater.
Hello and welcome to the Wealth Stream with Tim Scannell from Hightower Great Lakes. Today we're going to be talking about their wealth management process over there at Hightower. Good morning, Tim. How are you?
You know, I'm good. We're finally getting a little sunny weather, so life is good. No complaints.
Nice drying out after some rainy times. So we're talking about the wealth management process. Now, that's a very general term. What is the wealth management process?
Well, we've talked in previous podcasts about the CPA and Certified Financial Planner processes that we go through, and where we gather the qualitative, quantitative information, we prepare the analysis, we look at the balance sheets, cash flow, et cetera. And that's the fundamental kind of the base of the planning process, which I think is obviously critical. But the problem with that, just focusing purely on that basic process, is it doesn't really address some of the advanced planning needs that a lot of our business owner clients, entrepreneurs have. A lot of the clients we have that are focused on generational wealth planning, things like asset protection, protecting the assets from creditors, or some advanced tax planning. As people are looking to exit their business or transition wealth, taxes are a really critical part. And then the other part, we've talked in a number of podcasts in the past about advanced planning is preparing and protecting heirs, so that when they receive the wealth, they're ready. And I think just the general CPA, CFP core process doesn't really also address some of the unique family communications, transparency issues. So we try to supplement that with our wealth management process.
Got it. All right. So what are we covering today?
So today what I thought we would do is, what we do here in the office is we will divide the process that we follow with clients and also the number of meetings into a couple of different things, where the very first meeting we have with people is what we call the discovery meeting or discovery process. And when we talk about wealth management, I guess that was probably the first thing I should describe, is we break it down into, investment consulting, first of all, which a lot of people think of. And this will address, what most people think about when they come to a financial planner or a wealth manager, things like preserving their wealth, investing their wealth, et cetera. Secondly, we then focus on advanced planning. And we break this down into 4 primary areas. Again, this is kind of our wealth management process. We focus on wealth enhancement, mitigating taxes. Everything you do hopefully is profitable, not always, but there's obviously taxes related to it. And we want to make sure what we're doing is the most tax efficient process if possible. Also, wealth transfers. How do we get money to the next generation most efficiently? Wealth protection. We have some industries, some clients who are in industries that are litigious. They're constantly getting sued, or there's just high liability. The medical profession, just as an example, we want to make sure that those assets are protected. And then the fourth one is charitable giving. We want to make sure that when we go through this process and talk to our clients, when we meet new people, we want to get a really good feel for, what are they doing now? What do they care about in terms of charities, nonprofits, so that we can make sure that they're making impactful gifts, maybe concentrating them more and making greater impacts with them, leveraging different tools.
Yeah, absolutely.
So when we talked about, investment consulting, advanced planning, the third part of our wealth management process is what we call relationship management. And one you would think of, Eric, as just common, which is, we're trying to obviously establish and build this great relationship with our clients over time. It's a very consultative process. We're trying to gather information to make things custom. But the other part of it is that we spend a lot of time and energy managing the professional advisor team. Most of our clients have attorneys, CPAs, trust officers, insurance agents, et cetera. And we want to help be the kind of the glue or the coordinator to make sure that we're all working in concert for the same goals for those clients.
Gotcha. I mean, that's obviously kind of being the coach of the entire team. That's a very powerful position to be in, and extremely important, because every piece has to work together. And so many times, I think I would assume, and I've spoken to people before, and well, in my personal life, I'll just be honest, my accountant does not know my attorney that I use for my business.
Oh, shame on you.
I know, right? It's terrible. And they just don't have a relationship together. I don't know if they've ever done work in the past, but I've certainly never made that introduction. And my advisor doesn't necessarily have, he has access to their information, but has not pulled them all in together. Now, I'm not a large business owner, or I have a small business. I'm not to the point yet where it's going to be incredibly critical that everybody's talking together, but I see myself getting to that point sooner rather than later. So now I know, obviously through our conversations, I need to make some adjustments. But yeah, I can see where that would be incredibly valuable to every one of your clients. Yeah,
and the analogy we use is we want to become a personal CFO or chief financial officer, because most of our clients, entrepreneur clients, have a business where they have a CFO internally, but what they don't really have is a CFO externally helping managing their assets outside of the business. And just what a CFO typically does is they do the financial planning for the business. They help manage financial risks for the business. Mm-hmm. People think of them as the record keepers and financial reporting, but they're also responsible for a lot of the data and a lot of the data forecasting. And that's really what we try to do in our role. We try to help coordinate the advisors. We help gather the information and help them forecast and look into the future.
Mm-hmm. And that's a lot of that comes out of the discovery process then?
Yeah. So what we do with the discovery process in order to try and gather the information we need for that wealth management process is we have something we call a total client profile. And there's 7 categories when we are sitting down in that first meeting. And really only one of the categories covers assets, like the traditional financial data. Mm-hmm. The rest of them are really getting at some of those more soft issues that we need to know in advance before we kind of put together a plan. So for example, Eric, if I was sitting with you, I might, it would be very important that I understand, what your values are. Like, and we might ask you something like, what's important to you about money? And hopefully what that tells us are things like, maybe for you, it's financial security. Maybe for you, it's independence. Maybe for you, it's, I want to protect my family. So there's all kinds of different reasons why people financial plan, and values are kind of the first step where we spend a lot of time getting information from the client or from the prospect.
Gotcha.
We also, beyond, once we understand the values and, really why they're trying to do the plan, we then really try to nail down and talk about some of their goals. So we might want to know, for example, not just your personal goals, but also professional goals. We want to know what they're doing in work, maybe some of the future job changes they may be considering, their career path, because that's obviously important for financial planning. We would like to plan for different transition points, and that's critical.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things we've spoken about on podcasts before is, selling or acquiring businesses. You help with that, and you do a lot to help your clients plan for that. I mean, obviously that falls right into this category. If I come to you and say I have my own business, I would like to sell it in 20 years. There's a great reason to tell you that, because you could help me plan for that now and make sure those steps are in place, and have a kind of that checklist that I would be going through for that one small specific thing in my life as part of my entire goal package, if you will.
Exactly. And if I sat today with Eric, with you and your wife, we would talk about your personal goals, some of your professional goals. I'd also want to find out, what goals do you have for your kids if you have children? Mm-hmm. What goals do you have more and more for your parents if they're still alive and you're trying to maybe focus on some of the needs they're going to have as they're aging? Yeah. So the goals are different for everybody. So once we understand your values, once we understand your goals, it really helps us formulate the plan, as we get into talking about the different assets that you might have. All right. And that gets also into kind of the third category, which is what we call relationships. So we've talked about, children and parents, but there's also things like I have a lot of clients who really care about the community that they're in. So whether that's nonprofits, whether that's coworkers, there might be a key management team. So we want to know, in addition to immediate family, What other relationships do you have inside the business, outside the business with people that we also need to make sure we're planning for, because this is going to reveal if there's a priority that we need to address.
Good point.
And then once we've gone through the values, we've talked about the goals, we've kind of identified, what are your key relationships. This is really where we start talking about your assets. We want to know the traditional financial planning. How are your assets structured? What kind of cash flow is the business in an LLC, C Corp, et cetera? And we kind of dive into, some of the specific statements. And we like to ask things like, what has worked, what hasn't? What are some of the frustrations? What are some of the best decisions you made? What are some of the worst? So we can really kind of identify where on the balance sheet and where, in terms of cash flow, we need to really focus.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other part of it too is, so now we have a good feel for, maybe what their values and goals are, who they really want to plan for, where their assets are located and how they're structured. And we want to dive into one of the things we've talked about on previous podcasts, what other advisors are they working with? Because we want to make sure that they have the team. We've talked about when you're structuring or preparing your business for sale, oftentimes internally there's a great CPA, attorney, et cetera. But we want to know things like, do you have a personal lawyer, and has, what kind of skill sets does he or she have? And, do you have an insurance agent, an accountant, another investment advisor, financial planner, trust officer, et cetera? And what we want to do is assemble that team, make sure that they have the skill sets necessary to, prepare the plan for the future, and then really kind of help coordinate that going forward. And this, I think, is where we really add tremendous value, because just like you said earlier, you have a CPA and an attorney that really haven't talked. We want to make sure that they're talking because they need to be on the consistent path to make your life a success.
That's true.
So once we have a kind of a feel for, who the advisors are, et cetera, we then start talking about what we call process. And when I say process, what I really mean is, Eric, I don't know how, when you think of you and your wife together, are both of you super interested in the details, in the finances? Does one of you, do you divide the duties between financial planning in your family?
Well, I would say that as far as like paying bills and kind of managing the household expenses and things, that's completely my wife. She's very good at it. She does all the internet stuff, everything online. I have a book that she's given me, basically says, if something happens, here's all the information you need to know, which is great for me because I don't have to know it on a day-to-day basis. But when it comes to investing and future planning, retirement, things like that, that's kind of been in my realm. She doesn't really have a whole lot of interest in that part of it. So it's an interesting mix because you can't have one without the other, and you can't have the other one without the other as well. So it's, but we both do pretty well in our lane at this point.
Exactly. And in every instance that when I work with clients, some want to be really involved in managing the details. Some absolutely are phobic about it and want nothing to do with it. And you can just see, the unease as you dive into the details.
The glaze over. That's
exactly. And so
my wife's eyes would glaze over when we talk about the future stuff. She's about the here and now, right? So I get you.
Yeah. And the other part too is that, now more and more, we're really finding out up front whether people want face-to-face meetings. I'll tell you that the next generation, my clients' children, they absolutely need the services we offer. They want the services we offer. They have no interest in coming to see me and would prefer to do FaceTime, Google Chat, things like that. So we want to clarify up front, how often do you want to meet? How do you prefer to meet? Do you prefer phone, email, written communication? I just have a new client that I'm going out to the West Coast next week to work with, and just wants mail, the traditional snail mail. So that's what I'm doing because we're just trying to create a plan that fits and is comfortable with whoever we're working with. So process is big.
Yeah, and that's just it. You can't have that without the relationship, because if you were to say, "Hey, we're going to send you these emails," I would tell you that my wife, it drives her bananas that if you pick up my phone right now, the little email icon that's on the screen, it has a red number of how many emails you have. And the red number is usually the unread emails, right?
Right.
I showed her, this is probably 2 months ago, hey, look, I hit the magic number, 10,000.
Oh man.
Well, I've got 7 accounts in that one app. So I've got 10,000 unopened emails because most of it is just absolute garbage. A lot of it I'm seeing on my computer, so it doesn't register to my phone that I've already seen it, but it drives her crazy because she has to have hers cleaned out. So if you send me emails, that is the worst way to contact me because of all the other garbage that I get.
Yeah.
I would much prefer, if we're looking at setting up an appointment or something, if someone would text me or give me an instant message or call me. Any of those things I will see and I can respond to because I don't get a lot of that. And it's just trying to go through my email when you're getting 70, 80 a day. That's just too much. So that's fantastic. You find that out. I mean, it's such a basic, simple thing, but so many people don't even ask that question. They just say, well, we'll contact you.
Yeah.
You have no idea how they're going to do that.
Oh, I know. I look at Nancy's email on her phone and I just have to turn away because I think she's like you. It's like 4,000 unread.
She's a smart lady. Yeah,
oh,
exactly.
Man.
I like her. I like her already.
She's killing me. I'm like, okay, I just can't look anymore. Never mind. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So in addition to process, we also talk about, I want to know what their specific interests are because I want to know, but also we need to plan for that financially. So if they have health programs, health issues, health concerns, I like to know, what's an ideal vacation because one thing I'll tell you I find with people when they retire is they've spent their whole life saving, accumulating. And when they retire, you have to change this mode to now I'm withdrawing. And I tell you, my experience is it takes a year to 2 years just to get comfortable with that and just to get people to spend money. And that's not always the case, but the majority of cases, I'm asking them, when can you go on a trip? When can you start spending money? Because they're just not used to it. And it's just so hard for people once they stop working.
And it's so funny you say that because I know a lot of advisors out there would want them to save money, keep money in your account because either they're charging a percentage or whatever. They don't have truly, and this is just my opinion, but it's not my opinion. I've met advisors like this. They're more interested in what they have in the accounts because they get paid more than their clients actually either having fun or spending money in the correct way. So it helps them with taxes or whatever it is. And I love that because you and I've had this conversation before where you're like, look, you're starting your retirement. This is a prime time when you've got some time and you're healthy. And I mean, it's just basic facts. Look, you wait 10 years to take that trip. That's 10 more years your knees have to start getting wobbly, right?
Right.
10 more years that you're like, I'm going to need to pack more ibuprofen for this trip or whatever, So I love the fact that you're just like, look, you've got the finances. This is what we planned for. This is what we built over these last 20 years with you. It's time for you to enjoy all the fruits of your labor.
Yeah.
And do that first couple of years and then, reassess where you're at. And do we take less trips? Do we take more trips? What kind of trips do you want to take now? That's awesome.
Yeah. And it's funny because if you asked, 10 of my clients, probably 8 of them would say that that's always on the agenda. Tim asking me, or telling me that I should be spending more money.
That's right.
Yeah. So I do what I can, right?
Yeah. We do what we can.
So, part of the whole discovery process, there's really 2 priorities I have. Number one is I'm trying initially to identify what we talked about before, which is their values. Things like, their level 1 value, which I would call security, financial freedom, because everybody has a different, what we call high net worth or money personality. Yeah. And I want to know what they're worried about so that I can help address it and I can, anticipate and help plan for it. And then level 2 would be what we talked about: family, friends, community, really what are their values? And level 3 is really what I would call like the higher self, or, what sort of legacy, what are their reasons for being, what's the purpose? What do they consider the purpose of the money that they really wanted to use it for, and also communicate that to the next generation?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then the second priority I have is really, helping determine what I call like the high net worth personality, because seriously, I have clients that have all kinds of different reasons why, they do whatever they do. So for example, I really enjoy working with what I call a family steward. And a family steward is really somebody whose, primary motivation is really to protect the family, provide for them financially, pass their legacy, pass their education, their knowledge, And really, that's when I ask them things like, what do you want to achieve with your money? That's what they reveal, that's really their primary goal. And then it helps me craft a plan to help them accomplish that goal.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I'll ask that question, and what comes across is I have a number of clients who are what I call independents. An independent is somebody who's maybe accumulating money, but they're really doing it so that they can just do whatever they want, right? I mean, not whatever, but they like to travel, they like to fish, they like to go skiing, they just want to stay at home and read a book. But when they think of growing wealth, they're really thinking about financial independence. And so I want to make sure I'm tracking that, tracking when they can reach that point where they're financially independent, not have to worry about it based on all their goals. But I also have clients who are, accumulators where it's always about the high water mark, so if I need to know this because I need to pay more attention during market volatility, because, when you have a situation like, this year, market goes up and that becomes the new high water mark. And if the market goes down, there's just a lot of stress, a lot of concern. So I need to anticipate and be aware of that. And I need to communicate differently, not differently, but a little bit differently, to make sure that I'm making sure they're aware that this is a long-term process, keep them on track, et cetera.
Well, of course. And that goes right back to what type of communication that you have with your client, whether it's a phone call, whether it's a text, whether it's an email. It's almost the same thing when you're talking about these personalities. It's not that you're changing the message necessarily, because you work with all of your families very similarly. You go for their goals. So if you have somebody who is an accumulator, you're not going to try to get them to change their personality type to be that independent, right? I mean, so it's just a change in communication based on what is going to relieve the most stress from your client and help them live their best life possible. It doesn't have anything to do with any of these other personality traits.
Exactly. And, the other one is, I mentioned it earlier, somebody I would call a phobic. And a phobic is really just somebody that they just don't want to know about the details. They want to know they have a plan. They're extremely trusting, and you need to value and appreciate and respect that trust. But they just want a partner that can keep them on track, let them know when they're getting off track and they need to either scale back or make a change. But they, when I start getting into the details, they're just like, really, please, Tim, stop. Cut it out.
Yeah, I picture this person as the guy or the lady who will text you just one simple symbol, a question mark, and then you text back a thumbs up, and that's it. That's the relationship. How are we doing? We're good. I mean, fantastic. Talk to you next quarter, and not talk to you next year, whatever that is.
I remember back in, I think it was 1988 or 89. It was just a couple years in the business, and I had this elaborate 20-page, printout spreadsheet. And I remember trying to go through it because I'm a recovering accountant. And I just saw them go, really, you had me at hello. So I don't mean have you, but I mean, they trusted me and they said, yes, we want the plan. We don't need all that detail.
Exactly.
So when I meet ongoing with somebody like that, we cover the plan. We make sure they're on track. I have all the detail with me, but I know that I'm not going to bring it out unless they're really interested at that point to look for it. And usually, a lot of times, it's spouses are different, right? So one wants the detail, one doesn't.
Yeah. See, I like the detail. So this is so funny because I like the detail. My wife would absolutely not want to be there for the detail. She just doesn't want to get into that. But I'm the guy that likes the details, sitting, having a sandwich and drinking a Guinness. Right. Or having a burger and a Guinness. Let's just talk about it, because I'm almost the not the phobic, I guess, but it would be, look, isn't this what I hired you for? I trust you, Tim.
Yeah.
You've got this. I know that we're going to be fine, but I do like the data kind of stuff because I like to wrap my brain around things. So if we could just have a discussion over a burger and a beer, that's fantastic. That'd be fantastic with me.
And then the last one I'll just cover quickly is something I call the gambler.
Oh.
I love financial planning. I love tax planning. I love working on the puzzle of people's plans. We manage money and we have great processes. I have other teammates, people on my team who really help manage that process because they love that and they focus on it more. So a gambler is somebody who really, in addition, not just, they don't want just diversification. They also want to take risk. They want to look at individual securities, make a lot of different, specific investments that are maybe highly concentrated. And in that case, I know to bring a team, other players on the team immediately in, so that we're in meetings going forward, we have the specialists who can address some of the real details that they want about their specific investments. So a lot of it is, if I can identify what their goals are and what their personality is, I can also help identify who we need on the team going forward to make sure there's success.
Got it. Yeah. All right.
So again, I just wanted to talk today about this step one. So this is really a 60 to 90 minute meeting. We really even haven't talked so much about investments with the client at this point. We're really trying to discover, we're really focusing on just gaining an in-depth understanding of who they are, what their goals are, what their values are, who they care about, et cetera, what kind of professional network they have. And then from there, what I want to talk about maybe in the next podcast is really the meetings that follow, where we have an investment plan meeting, and then something we call a mutual commitment meeting, and then a follow-up. So there's really 3 or 4 meetings after this one, but the first one I wanted to cover just in one podcast, just because I think it's so valuable and so important. Yeah,
and honestly, I think that would be my favorite meeting.
Yeah,
I mean, a discovery process, because that's the beginning of a relationship, right? I mean, it's kind of like, I don't want to call it speed dating by any means, because I don't want to compare the two, but it really is getting in there and just sharing information, and really it gives your client an opportunity to hear your heart, your mind, where you're at, and gives you an opportunity to kind of diagnose and figure out, okay, where do I see this personality type, and how can I best fit what they need? And then the decision is made. And so I think that would be the best meeting to have right off the bat.
Yeah. Because, everyone's goals and dreams, they change all the time. And, clients work with us because we create customized plans based on their unique goals. We know they're going to change. So we help them down the path, and we continually make sure we have the proper team along with what we're doing to make sure that they can achieve success.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we've been talking, there are people listening to this podcast right now that are saying, you know what, I'm the burger and beer guy that would love to have that discussion and go over those types of things during that time. Or there's, somebody out there that says, I'm a lady who likes to have my hands in it to a certain extent. And then, once I trust the advisor, I'm going to be more hands off. And I just want to check in, every once in a while, just to know we're still on track. We're still okay. They've put themselves in the shoes of the kind of the stories we talked about. And now they have questions.
Right.
How do they reach out to you, Tim?
So they can reach out to us. You can call me direct at my office anytime at 219-246-5370. You could also find us at hightoweradvisors.com. We're at Hightower Great Lakes.
Awesome. Thank you so much. This is a great podcast.
Thank you.
All right. And thank you for listening to the WealthStream podcast with Tim Scannell. If you have not subscribed to the podcast yet, please click the subscribe now button below. This way, when Tim comes out with a new podcast, it'll show up directly on your listening device. This makes it much easier to share these podcasts with your friends and family. Thanks again for listening today. For everyone at Hightower Great Lakes, this is Eric Johnson reminding you to live your best day every day. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the WealthStream podcast. We hope you gained some valuable insight that you can apply to your life and share with others. Please don't forget to subscribe below to be notified when new episodes become available. And don't forget to live greater. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Hightower Great Lakes. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service provider with any questions you may have regarding your investment planning. Hightower Great Lakes is a group of investment professionals registered with Hightower Securities, LLC, member FINRA and SIPC, and with Hightower Advisors, LLC, a registered investment advisor with the SEC. Securities are offered through Hightower Securities, LLC. Advisory services are offered through Hightower Advisors, LLC.